Chapter 24 Conclusion After many days, when time sufficed for the people to arrange their thoughts in reference to the foregoing scene, there was more than one account of what had been witnessed on the scaffold. Most of the spectators testified to having seen, on the breast of the unhappy minister, a scarlet letter, the very semblance of that worn by Hester Prynne, imprinted in the flesh. As regarded its origin there were various explanations, all of which must necessarily have been conjectural. Some affirmed that the Reverend Mr. Lindsay, on the very day when Hester Prynne first wore her ignominious badge, had begun a course of penance, which he afterwards, in so many fruitful methods, followed out by inflicting a hideous torture on himself. Others contend that the stigma had not been produced until a long time subsequent, when old Roger Chillingworth, being a potent necromancer, had caused it to appear, through the agency of magic and poisonous drugs. Others, again, and those best able to appreciate the minister's peculiar sensibility and the wonderful operation of his spirit upon the body, whispered their belief that the awful symbol was the effect of the ever-active thought of remorse, gained from the inmost heart outwardly, and at last manifested in heaven's dreadful judgment by the visible presence of the Lord. The reader may choose among these theories. We have thrown all the light we could acquire upon the portent, and will gladly, now that it has done its office, erase its deep print out of our own brain, where long meditation has fixed it in very undesirable distinctness. It is singular, nevertheless, that certain persons, who were spectators of the whole scene, and professed never once to have removed their eyes from the Reverend Mr. Disdale, denied that there was any mark whatever on his breast, more than on a new-born infant. Neither, by their report, had his dying words acknowledged nor even remotely implied any the slightest connection, on his part, with the welter for which Hester Prynne had so long worn the scarlet letter. According to these highly respectable witnesses, the minister, conscious that he was dying, conscious also that the reverence of the multitude placed him already among saints and angels, had desired, by yielding up his breath on the arms of that fallen woman, to express to the world how utterly nugatory is the choices of man's own righteousness, after exhausting life in his effort for mankind's spiritual good. He had made the manner of his death a parable, in order to impress on his admirers the mighty and mournful lesson, that, in the view of infinite purity, we are sinners all alike. It was to teach them that the holiest among us has but attained so far above his yellows as to discern more clearly the mercy which looks down and repudiates more utterly the pantheon of human merit, which will look as proudly upward. Without despairing at truth so momentaneous, we must be allowed to consider his version of Mr. Dinsey's story as only an instance of that stubborn fidelity with which a man's friends, and especially a clergyman's, will sometimes uphold his character, when proof clear as the midday sunshine on the scarlet letter, established in a false and sin-stained creation of the dust. The authority which we have shall followed a manuscript of little date, drawn up from the verbal testimony of individuals, some of whom had known Hester Prynne, while others had heard the tale from contemporary witnesses, fully confirms the view taken in the foregoing pages. Among many morals which press upon us from the poor minister's miserable experience, we put only this into a sentence: Be true, be true, be true. Show freely to the world, if not your worst, yet some trait wherever the worst may be inferred. Nothing was more remarkable than the change which took place, almost immediately after Mr. Disney's death, in the appearance and demeanour of the old man known as Roger Shuttleworth. All this strange energy, all his virile and intellectual force, seemed at once to desert him, insomuch that he positively withered up, shriveled away and almost vanished from mortal sight, like an uprooted weed that lies wilting in the sun. This unhappy man had made the very principle of his life to consist in the pursuit and systematic exercise of revenge, and when by its completest strength and consummation that evil principle was left with no further material to support it; when in short there was no more devil's work on earth for him to do, it only remained for the unhumanized mortal to betake himself whither his master would find him tax enough, and pay him his wages daily. But to all this shall we begin, so long our near acquaintances, as well Roger Shuttleworth and his companions, we will fain be merciful. It is a curious subject of observation and inquiry, whether hatred and love be not the same thing at the bottom. Each, in its utmost development, supposes a high degree of intimacy and hard knowledge. It renders one individual dependent for the food of his affections and spiritual life upon another. Each leaves the passionate lover or the noblest passionate hater forlorn and desolate by the withdrawal of his object. Philosophically considered, therefore, the two passions seem essentially the same, except that one happens to be seen in a celestial radiance, and the other on a dusky and lurid glow. In the spiritual world, the old physician and the minister, mutual victims as they had been, may and worse have found their early stock of hatred and antipathy transmuted into golden love. Leaving his discussion apart, we have a matter of business to communicate to the reader. At old Roger Shuttleworth's decease, which took place with the year, and by his last will and testament, of which Gardner Bellingham and the Reverend Mr. Wilson were executors, he bequeathed a very considerable amount of property, but here in England, to little Pearl, the daughter of Hester Prynne. So Pearl, the elf child, the demon offspring as some people, up to that epoch, persisted in considering her, became the richest heiress of her day in the New World. Not improbably, these circumstances wrought a very material change in the public estimation, and had the mother and child remained here, little pet, little Pearl, at a marriageable period of life, might have mingled her wild blood with the lineage of the devoutest Puritan among them all. But in no long time after the physician's death, the wearer of the scarlet letter disappeared, and Pearl along with her. For many years, thought a vague report will now and then find its way across the sea, like a shameless piece of driftwood tossed ashore, with the initial of a name upon it, yet no theories of them unquestionably authentic were received. The story of the Scarlet Letter grew into a legend; its spell, however, was still potent, and kept the scaffold awful where the poor minister had died, and likewise the cottage by the sea shore where Hester Prynne had built. Near this latter spot, one afternoon, some children were at play, when they beheld a tall woman in a great robe approach the cottage door. In all those years it had never once been opened, but either she unlocked it, or the deacon would in iron yelled to her hat, or she glided shadow like through these impediments, and, at all events, went it. On the threshold she paused, turned proudly round, For perchance the idea of entering alone, and also shame the home of so intense a former life, was more dreary and desolate than even she could bear. But her hesitation was only for an instant, though long enough to display a scarlet letter in her breast. And Hester Prynne had returned and taken upon her long-forsaken shame. But where was little Pearl? If still alive, she must now have been in the flush of bloom of early womanhood. None knew, nor ever learned, with the fullness of perfect certainty, whether the Earth-child had gone thus intimately to maiden grave, or whether her wild, rich nature had been softened and subdued, and made capable of a woman's gentle happiness. But through the remainder of Hester's life there were indications that the recluse of the Scarlet Letter was the object of love and interest with some inhabitant of another land. Letters came with a martial seal upon them, though of appearance unknown to English heraldry. In the cottage there were articles of comfort and luxury, such as Hester never cared to use, but which only wealth could have purchased, and affection have imagined for her. There were trinkets too, little ornaments, beautiful tokens of a continual remembrance, that must have been wrought by delicate fingers at the impulse of a fond heart. And once Hester was seen embroidering a baby garment with such a lavish richness of golden fancy as would have raised a public tumult, had any infant thus apparently been shown to our sombre community. In fine, the gossip of the day believed in Mr. Sovereign Pugh, who made investigation a century later, believed, and one of his recent successors in office moreover faithfully believes, that Peter was not only alive, but married, and happy, and mindful of her mother, and that she would most joyfully have entertained that sad and lonely mother at her fireside. But there was a more real life for Hester Prynne, here in New England, than in that unknown region where Pearl had found a home. Here had been her sin, here her sorrow, and here was yet to be her penitence. She had returned therefore and resumed, of her own free will, for not the sternest magistrate of that iron period would have imposed it, resumed the symbol of which we have related so dark a tale. Never afterwards did it quiet her bosom, but in the lapse of the toilsome, thoughtful, and self-devout years that made up a history life, the Scarlet Letter ceased to be a stigma which attracted the world's scorn and bitterness, and became a type of something to be sorrowed over and looked upon with awe, yet with reverence too, and as Hester Prynne had no selfish end, nor lived in any measure for her own profit and enjoyment, people brought out their sorrows and perplexities, and besought her counsel as one who had herself gone through a midnight trouble. Women, more especially, in the continually recurring trials of wounded, wasted, wronged, misplaced, or erring in sinful passion, or with the dreary burden of a heart unhealed because unveiled and unsought, came to Hester's cottage demanding why they were so crushed and what this remedy. Hester comforted and consoled them as best she might. She assured them too of her firm belief that at some brighter period when the world should have grown ripe for it, in heaven's own time, a new truth will be revealed in order to establish the whole relation between man and woman on a solid ground of mutual happiness. Earlier in life, Hester had vainly imagined that she herself might be the destined prophetess, but had long since recognized the impossibility that any mission of divine and mysterious truth should be confined to a woman stained with sin, bowed down with shame, or ever burdened with a lifelong sorrow. The angel and apostle of the coming revelation must be a woman, indeed, but lovely, pure and beautiful, and wise, moreover, not through dusky grave, but the Tyrell medium of joy, in showing how sacred love should make us happy by the truest test of life, successful to such an end. So said Hester Prynne, and glanced her sad eyes downward at the scarlet letter. And after many, many years, a new grave was dug near an old sunken one, in the burial ground beside which King's chapel has since been built. It was near that old and sunken grave, yet with a space between, as if the dust of the two sleepers had no right to mingle. Yet one tombstone served for both. All around there were monuments carved with armorial bearings, and on these simple slabs of slate, as the curious investigator may still discern, and perplex himself with the purport, there appeared the semblance of an engraved escutcheon. It bore a device, a herald wording, of which might serve for a motto and brief description of our now concluded legend, so sombre it is, in relief only by one ever-glowing point of light glimmer that the shadows. On a fight, save the letter A. Girls. The end.